You ever hear about a piece of tech that was supposed to be a total game changer only for it to, well, vanish? That's exactly the story with a certain type of EV motor. It was hyped up as the absolute future of electric cars, and then, poof, it was gone. So let's get into this, because it's a really fascinating engineering mystery. So back when modern EVs were really starting to take off, engineers were calling this the ideal structure. Seriously, the perfect design. It promised to completely change how cars were built from the ground up. Which leads to the obvious question. If it was so great, why aren't we all driving them? Where on earth did they go? Okay, so the tech we're talking about is the in-wheel motor. And the idea is just brilliantly simple. Instead of having a big motor somewhere in the car's frame, you just put a small, powerful one directly inside each wheel. Just think about that. It would free up tons of space for people in cargo, make the car way simpler, and give you insane control over every single wheel. It sounded like a silver bullet. But this amazing idea ran smack into a series of massive walls, and the very first one was a law of physics you just can't ignore. And yeah, this one is a biggie. This isn't something engineers could just tweak or fix with a software update. Nope, it's baked right into the physics of how a car actually drives down the road. And it all boils down to two words: unsprung mass. So what is unsprung mass? It's basically all the heavy stuff on your car that the suspension springs don't hold up. So, your wheels, your tires, the brakes, that stuff. And here's the golden rule for a smooth and safe ride. You want this unsprung mass to be as light as humanly possible. So what happens when you decide to add a heavy electric motor right inside the wheel? You run headfirst into the wall of physics. This right here shows you the problem perfectly. On a normal car, the wheels are pretty light, relatively speaking, so the suspension can react super quickly to bumps and keep the tire glued to the pavement. But with an in-wheel motor, you're bolting an extra 10 plus kilograms, that's the motor, the casing, all of it, directly to the wheel. The suspension just can't keep up. The result? A bone-jarring, bumpy ride where the tire can literally bounce off the road. And look, this isn't just about feeling a few extra bumps in the road. This is a real safety issue. When your wheels are too heavy, you get less grip. That means your braking distances get longer and your handling gets sloppy and unstable, especially if you have to swerve or make an emergency maneuver. It's a fundamental problem. And believe it or not, that was only the first wall. The next one was even tougher. So if the physics problem was a wall, this next challenge was a complete engineering nightmare. Because the designers wanted to put this incredibly precise, complex piece of electronics in what is, hands down, the absolute worst place you could possibly put anything on a car. I mean, this quote from one of the source materials just says it all, doesn't it? A hellish environment. You have to remember, an electric motor is a finely tuned machine, and the plan was to stick it in a place that's under constant attack from, well, everything. And here's just a taste of what that hellish environment is like. You've got nonstop, violent vibrations coming up from the road. It's constantly being blasted with water, mud, corrosive salt, and sand. Then you've got scorching heat coming off the brakes. We're talking over 100 degrees Celsius. Oh, and it might get smashed by rocks and debris, all while spinning at incredible speeds. You're asking a complex motor to survive that for a decade or more? Building something that tough is an immense and costly challenge. Okay, so let's say you're a genius. You somehow solve the physics and the engineering. You'd still slam right into the third wall. The brutal, unforgiven reality of business. The numbers, at the end of the day, just didn't work. And this is where it gets a little counterintuitive, right? The whole sales pitch was simplifying the car, getting rid of drive shafts, axles, gearboxes. Fewer parts should mean a lower cost. But weirdly, with in-wheel motors, the opposite turned out to be true. It led to a massive multiplication of expensive components. Engineers started calling it the X4 problem. Instead of one big, cost-effective motor, now you needed 4 smaller, specialized ones. And each of those motors needs its own inverter to run it, its own set of heavy-duty power cables, and usually its own dedicated cooling system. All of a sudden, you've quadrupled the number of really critical, really expensive parts, which also means you've quadrupled the number of things that can break. This multiplication problem also completely destroyed the efficiency argument. Yeah, the theory was great. You get rid of all the heavy mechanical parts that connect the motor to the wheels, and you should save a bunch of energy. But in the real world, tests showed that 4 small motors are just less efficient than one large optimized one. And all that extra wiring and complex software needed to coordinate everything, that created new ways to lose energy. The whole system often ended up being less efficient than a standard EV. And that brings us to the final wall, the one that probably scared the automakers the most: pure, unadulterated risk. For a giant car company, this design is a legal and financial minefield. If one motor fails, who's responsible? How do you manage a recall? The money you'd have to spend on quality control, on brand new crash testing protocols, and on getting this radical design certified around the world, it was just astronomical. No one was willing to take that kind of gamble. So, after hitting all of these walls, the physics, the engineering, the cost, the risk, the picture becomes pretty clear. The dream itself, the core idea, wasn't wrong, but the plan for how to make it happen was flawed right from the very beginning. This one sentence just nails it. It perfectly sums up the whole story. The idea of having independent four-wheel control and a totally flat to open chassis, absolutely brilliant. But putting those precious motors inside the wheel, that hellish environment, was, just the wrong move. So, here's the final report card. On paper, the idealism and the performance potential were through the roof, but the practical difficulty of actually building it for the real world, extremely high. And that's why this incredible technology is still just a star on the concept car circuit and never actually made it into your garage. So what did the car industry do instead? Well, they developed what's called the e-axle. This is pretty much the standard today. It cleverly packages the motor, the gears, and the inverter into one neat little unit that sits on the axle but still inside the car's body. It gives you a lot of the space-saving benefits without any of the unsprung mass or durability nightmares. It's a smart compromise. But here's the cool part. The dream isn't dead. It's just evolving. The next big thing that people are working on is the e-corner unit. This takes the original idea and pushes it even further. It integrates the motor, the steering, the braking, and the suspension all into a single modular block that just bolts onto the corner of the car. It's the original dream, just reimagined for the future. Now, to make that a reality, we're going to need some serious technological leaps. We're talking about new ultra-lightweight materials to finally solve that weight problem. We'll need new kinds of motors that are tougher and more powerful than ever, and you'll need incredibly smart AI that can manage the power and suspension of each corner in real time. Which really brings us to the final big question. With all this new tech just over the horizon, could we actually see this idea make a huge comeback? Not as the in-wheel motor we know, but as something way more advanced. Maybe that ideal structure that vanished all those years ago wasn't gone for good. Maybe it was just waiting for the rest of technology to finally catch up.